I'm on board the Blue Dolphin. She's a 45-foot lobster boat down here in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, with Ian, the owner and captain of the boat. And, you know, I'm just noticing aboard the boat here, this boat's had a lot of work done on it over the years, quite a bit. I don't know how long you've owned the boat or how much of it that you've been responsible for, but I noticed it's got a brand new keel in it. Were you around when they put the new keel in this boat?
Yeah, the keel's new. The keel was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, right when I got on board, that was the first thing.
Who did some of that work?
That was Jimmy Titus.
Jimmy Titus did that. Yeah, Jimmy and I've known Jimmy for years. He does great work, you know. And you've done a lot of work since, I'm sure of it. I know you told me that Jimmy did some work back aft here, but, you know, you guys have got all new floor timbers in it and everything. Fantastic, you know. It kind of makes me feel good because I like to see people that are interested in boats like this. This is the kind of boats that I grew up with right here. You know, I wasn't a big fisherman, but I was always around the docks and the boat yards and places like that and where they hauled the boats. So I got to see what went wrong with them and what went right with them and what you had to do to them to fix them and everything ever since I was a little kid. So I think it's pretty commendable that anybody would be even interested at all in fixing something like this up. But, you know, once you put the right amount of effort in it, I'm sure you're going to get a reward. So, you know.
Yeah, I grew up on wood boats, so it's a labor of love, but it's
fantastic.
Worth it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Now, I said she was 45 feet. It is 45 feet,
Yep, 45,
right?
correct.
And 14 feet wide, 14-foot beam.
Yep.
So I'm back aft here with Ian, and I've been looking down through the hatch here and noticing that all the floor timbers that go across the center line here, these things are huge, you know, from one side of the boat all the way to the other, basically, nice and flat. All been replaced brand new. I mean, that's what keeps the boat nice and rigid, especially back aft where the boat's flat. The shape of the boat does not add a lot of rigidity to it, but, you know, the floor timbers do, so that's been done. The framing, look at the framing. It's got the plastic framing in it all down in the center line down in here.
So I wasn't there, but that was still Jimmy Titus. I'd say that was about 2002.
I got you.
And that's when he did the floors and all these floor timbers.
I got you, yeah, at the same time as the floor timbers, sure. I'm actually very happy that he did that because it's kind of a condoning of the way that I've done some framing over the years previous to this, quite a bit previous to this, and to see people pick up on it, I think it's great. You know, let's go down below and take a look around down below.
Yeah, sounds good.
Ian, let's talk about this plastic. I mean, you know, I've always been impressed with this plastic. I don't know how you feel about it, but you know, it's looking pretty good in there, nice and tight up against the plank and everything. What do you think?
I think it's the way to go.
Yeah.
I think in 30 years I'll be happy.
Yeah,
that we still have plastic.
Yeah. You know, all these frames, these wooden frames going around a tight bend like this are, you know, apt to crack along in here. And, you know, in different kinds of boats, you can't really fasten a bilge stringer in there either because the more you bolt through there, you know, the weaker the frame gets. But these plastic frames, they don't break. They just don't break, you know, and you know, so, and they hold the fastening like unbelievable. The fastenings that last twice as long in this plastic as it would in a wooden frame.
Yeah.
Twice, maybe 3 or 4 times longer. Incredible. You know, they don't conduct any electricity. They don't hold any minerals. Here's a little comparison right here between the plastic frames that they put in, you know, to replace the older frames like this one right here. Now, the plastic one's up nice and tight against the planking because, you know, the plastic holds the fastening unbelievable. When you tighten that fastening up, you're going to get results. It does not strip a screw in the plastic where, you know, you really can't tighten these frames up against the framing because, you know, there's no holding power in the frame itself. You know, then you get a little bit of crud in there, a little bit of sawdust and different stuff like that, and you end up living with that frame right there, that space behind that frame, unless you just extract the frame completely. But this ends up being actually like a little bit of a new shape. The boat is actually swelled up a little bit bigger than it was exactly when it was built. You know, that's what happens around these tight turns. The planking swells tight and tight and tight, and it either separates from the framing or it breaks the framing all by itself without any stress of any other type. And, you know, that hasn't happened here, but I think the planking has separated from the framing a long time ago. And now this framing here has caught up with it, so. It sure is pleasant working with the stuff, isn't it, putting it in?
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
have to steam it and have 4 or 5 guys on the same frame and, you know, hustling and trying to get it in there as fast as you can. I mean, this is something that I did a long time ago, and it got kind of popular, you know. I mean, how did you guys get onto this? Who got onto this? Was it you, or was it Jimmy Titus, or you know what?
That was Jimmy. Yeah, he was saying this is the way forward. This is what everyone's doing. Everyone who knows what they're doing is moving this way.
This is the way forward.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's something I hadn't come up with. That's pretty cool. Yeah, to hear him say that. He's a very accomplished shipwright, you know, and he can tell when you use something like this, you're not going to have any failures. So that's what's really cool about it. So say this scarf right here. Now, you know, you see there's no holes in the end. So I know he didn't fasten it with screws at the end. So what did he do to get that up there nice and tight? If this one was not in there at the time, he put a clamp around it. You could put clamps around it and tighten it up with clamps and wait for the glue to dry. Take the clamps off and there you go. You know, but say that plank was in there and you couldn't put clamps around that, or sometimes the framing's not deep enough, you can't get the clamps to go in there no matter what you do. You know, basically what you have to do is come up with another system, and I think what he's done is he's made like a bracket that screws on there with a couple screws here and a couple screws over here, and like a timber that goes by across there, and then you put wedges behind that timber to wedge this up nice and tight, and that just has to stay on there. It's like a splint until the glue dries, and then once the glue dries, you just unfasten it and take it off, and then obviously all of these things protrude afterwards. It's sticking well out, you know, and then once it's done, they take an electric plane and just, or a hand plane, and just dub it right down. You know, you wouldn't want to put it in too thin, you know, you want to put it in too heavy.
That's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me show you this hider butt that they put in right here now. This is a piece that's put in to hide the butt where the butt used to butt against the frame right here. This plank and this plank butted against this frame right here, so it had a seam in it right here. And they become bad and the frames don't hold very good, so they scarf it back in both directions and put a piece in it like this. And basically it's put in there a little bit proud and glued in nice and tight, and once it's nice and glued up tight, then what they do is they take all the clamps and different things off that they put on it to hold it, and then you just take a plane and scarf it right down, because you can see where it's proud on the ends right here. And then actually it's hanging past the seam a tiny bit, so they can surface that so it's like really nice in alignment with this plank right here. They'll test it with like a little batten going across there and touch it up really nice before they put the next plank in. This job that you're doing on the scarf, and this is pretty comprehensive. It looks like you're doing all the scarfs on the whole boat. You know, so there isn't going to be any more butt blocks or any more butts on the frames or anything with the planking.
That was exactly the selling point with the Shipwright. He said once we go through all the planks and scarf all of them down, the whole hull will be much stronger, be much more rigid, and will help, it will just last longer.
Absolutely.
Less leakage, potential issues. So that was the route we went down.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, every time I do this, I think of the same thing, that, you know, I can actually notice afterwards if I use the boat or do whatever, that the boats become way more rigid. But everything you do adds to the rigidity. The scarfs add to the rigidity, the framing, you know, the bearing against the planking, you know, the framing against the planking, you know, the floor timbers. One of the things that really adds rigidity to a boat like this is the seam work, because in order for it to twist like this, the seams actually have to slide on each other just a tiny bit. You know, you're talking thousandths of an inch, very, very small amount. But the tighter the seams are, or whatever it is that holds those seams nice and tight, like the lumps in the caulking, the lumps actually stop the planks from sliding on each other. You know, and if they're bearing on each other nice and tight, the hull becomes quite a bit more rigid, quite a bit more rigid. You know, when you put a boat in the water and it's dry and you go out and use it, you can feel it actually moving. But once it gets swelled up nice and tight, you know, a boat that's in good shape, it's amazing the difference in the boat. It really, really is, the fact that it got wet and then became stiff. So I've noticed that you've been all over it. You're everywhere on this thing. You've done framing, you've done all kinds of different things. I don't think any one single aspect of it is completely done yet. You've still got some framing going on and some planking going on. Ian, it's been great looking around the boat and just looking at all the work you've been doing, and you know, I'm pretty impressed actually. But before we take off, first thing I wanted to do was ask you, you got something else going to go on back after? I think you told me once you were considering replacing the whole transom.
Yeah, that's all going to be coming off and getting replaced. The boat was originally a lobster yacht, so we have a little surprise that's going to go in there.
Yeah, because it's not going to be used really as a lobster boat ever again. It's going to be like a gentleman's lobster yacht, right?
Exactly.
So it's going to have some surprises.
Yeah.
A nice settee back here.
Possibly.
You know, maybe a fly bridge.
Yeah.
Different things like that.
Exactly.
Well, we can't wait to come back and see it because, you know, we just started covering it and all this stuff, all of it interests us, you know, the power, the tankage, you know, everything. So, you know, thanks for
thank you.
letting us on board.
Yeah. Looking forward to it next time.
Thank you.